ASA mencipta Aspire P3 Ultrabook yang berkuasa dan ringan dengan menggunakan Intel Inside
Tiesto?
supaya kita dapat menerokai hidup selain daripada kehidupan harian.
This is my destiny!
The new Acer Aspire P3 Ultrabook, inspired by Intel.
Selamat petang dan salam sejahtera. Salam reformasi.
Salam.
It is long overdue. Long overdue, and we cannot continue to have another death being sacrificed because we have a police force yang sangat degil dan tidak ada conscience. Because if we have a police force that has conscience, we will not be facing with such deaths and torture. If we look at the numbers, it's growing, and the numbers here says very less. If you look, but what I'm interested is 230 for this year is 9, but what is coming through for me is it's not just one race being affected, because there is a perception itu masalah orang India, because a lot of the visible deaths are Indians, and in terms of ratio to population it is high, but you have Malays, you have Chinese, you have foreigners, you have people of all races dying. When the Japanese guy, the latest death, came in, Guaneng said, we have gone global. And I said, no, Guaneng. In 1995, when I raised the deaths of migrants under custody, we went global. And we have been global all the time. And I think that's very important to realize that we have been going global. So the problem is not just, it's Malaysians, it's anyone who gets into the hands of the police are at risk of death. And that's why it is indeed time that we, rakyat, bangkit dengan sepenuh-penuh hati. We have to come forward next. And therefore, the reason is that we cannot forget the people who have gone, because the families continue to experience the pain, the absence of their sons, of their children, that is there. And so we have Chia, we have Coogan. We have also to make sure that the struggle goes on. And why is it? Because we have a new scenario when families are saying, no, we don't want this to go on. There is a resistance. And that's why we had Sukumar. 141 days the family waited. But as stated by Surendran, he says, yes, there's been a failure of the current system of inquest by magistrate, lack of independence, and therefore the need for the coroner's court. That is the battle cry of the families. From Francis, from Coogan to Damendran to, that is the battle cry. That we need to change the system. The next thing we see is the affected families are mobilizing. Mobilizing and organizing people to resist. And this came through very well in the Teo Beng Hock case, where today we have the emergence of a new movement called Malaysians for Big Hawk, of all races and all communities. And therefore, this is a beautiful development of resistance to which we have to give support and growth. And I think that is the call today. Then we are saying, yes, judgment has come through, but you pay for what you did. And that's accountability. And so we have Coogan's mother going a bit further and saying, taking the government and the police force to accountability and therefore suing on account of alleged negligence and breach of statutory duty. And this is also a form of resistance to which we must give support. And that's very important because this Barisan National Government believes it can get away with anything. The police force believes it can get away with everything. And as Surendran clearly stated, the whole system has been organized so that they can act with impunity. And so the campaign is to destroy all the processes in the system in order to ensure justice. So it is not just looking at the police, it's looking at pathologists, last year when we had the forum, I also said, what is the responsibility and accountability of doctors, of pathologists, of doctors who go and heal wounds from torture and don't voice out? When I was arrested, one of the main groups that came out globally was Physicians for Human Rights. And they did a very big campaign. But we do not see this happening in this country. We need to have those Physicians for Human Rights to come forward and say, we cannot accept torture. And that's very, very important to save lives. And part of the failure of the EAIC, where now the truth is coming out, is to look at who is in the EAIC. We have not heard about it, and now when we hear about it, and we begin to see who are they, one of them is Muhammad Nazri, ex-MACC man who probed Beng Hawk hours before he died. Now that raises a lot of questions. You are part of a group that may have caused the death in custody, and you get promoted into an institution that is supposed, and he's senior assistant director. Now, that is the corruption and the filth that we have. You do harm, you get promoted. And that is why that we have to reject this system. And so, recognizing the new forms of resistance, families no longer tend to remain silent and continue to struggle for justice and accountabilities. Families and friends mobilize to raise awareness and continue the struggle for change, as arising from the Theo Beng Hawk inquiry. Families are strengthened by legal support and community support. Lawyers for Liberty and people and like Roger and Serena coming forward and saying, yes, we have to collectively act in them. And so last year, we formed a coalition consisting of 30 NGOs to begin a movement to stop state violence. And this is really very crucial. And in particular, the state violence brought through by police, also by other agencies, but we want to give focus today on the police. And so, what have we come through? We have 7 demands. The first is that in these 7 demands, our core values is to save lives. We give the highest value to life because we get life only once. God gives us life only once. And that is why in the Universal Declaration of Rights, the first principle is right to life. And that is the value in which we come. 2, the value of accountability. That if you do wrong, especially as an enforcement agency, you have to be made accountable. And that's why we're saying all offenders be made accountable. Now, all speakers, the panel have said IPCMC now, which is our campaign, and that is our real focus, and you know the reasons why. Now, we are also saying that for overall, we must have an ombudsman system that will evaluate, that will look into the issues of accountability and how mechanisms that are established work effectively or not. You know, a system that's particularly, we find in the Scandinavian countries, that is shown to be effective. Now, there needs to be a review of all the standing operating procedures. Right now, it's all very closed up. When I was going through my trial, I asked many times, what are the standing operating procedures, Suri? And why should it be Suri? There has to be transparency. And this includes the IGP's standing orders as well. So that must be transparent. All of us must know, so that if any of us are detained, we know what it is. It's very important. Now, number 5 is the independent and competent coroner's court system. Number 6 is very important, and that is ratify the Convention Against Torture and the Optional Protocol. Now, there are majority of the countries have ratified. There's a small group of countries, and we are part of that, who have not ratified the convention. And this is very important. So we have to call out for the ratification of the Convention Against Torture and the Optional Protocol, so that with those standards that are stated in the convention, it will be translated into laws so that torture is not used as a tool to extract confession or just to humiliate and punish. And the 7th demand is to support human rights education and training programs for all members of enforcement agencies. There is absolutely no human rights perspective. All that the police believe is they have the power over you, and therefore they can do what they want and get away with. And that perception, that attitude must change. And that can only happen if the rakyat bank it. And that's why the coalition has been formed to move the 7 demands, because we cannot just have IPCMC if we don't change the whole system. And that's why the 7 demands makes this comprehensive change, and we want to move this as well, but we start with pressuring the IPCMC. And in order to pressure for the IPCMC, we are going to ask members of parliament to sign a pledge. Sign a pledge that they will support the IPCMC. Now, if any member of parliament, ahli parliament tidak mau tanda tangan itu pledge, we will name and shame that parliamentarian. Yeah. And so that is what we will do in order to push this. And we are happy that Pakatan Kula is going to back at the private members bill, and let us move that agenda and see who does and who will not sign. So we want your support for this movement, and as Suren said in our last press statement, we have said that if this BN government does not want to listen, if the police don't want to listen, then kita turun jalan raya. Thank you very much.
ASA mencipta Aspire P3 Ultrabook yang berkuasa dan ringan dengan menggunakan Intel Inside supaya kita dapat menerokai hidup selain daripada kehidupan harian.
It's my destiny!
The new ASA Aspire P3 Ultrabook, inspired by Intel.